G'day everyone, it's Jason here from Coastal Asbestos on the Gold Coast, the Gold Coast #1 asbestos removal company. And today we're going to be talking about Mr. Fluffy. Okay, for those of you who are aware of it, you pretty much know what happened. For those of you who are unaware of it, I'm going to go through a little bit of history and bring you up to date with what's happening currently with the Mr. Fluffy situation. So back in the around the 1970s, in Canberra especially, and they have found other cases of it out of Canberra, there was a guy going around pumping pure amosite, brown asbestos, shards, fibres into people's houses. You got to remember back then the dangers were unknown, let's say that. So this stuff, because asbestos is fairly fluffy, it's lightweight, durable, stronger than steel, but it is really, really fluffy. It's like sort of like cotton candy. And you can imagine that all chopped up and they could blow it in. And what they did was, obviously it was there because of its amazing qualities for insulation, and it was, you know, electrically inert, non-conductive, so there was no dangers of putting it in roof spaces at that time. So they just had a big thing and a big pipe, and they used to just pump it and fill the ceiling space with this stuff. Well, and it was pure brown asbestos. Now, it's not to be confused with Cool and Cozy, which is a product that was that we come across a lot, and that was newspapers that was shredded and then treated with a fire retardant and blown into ceilings. Okay, the Cool and Cozy stuff is a separate product, and it has no asbestos, and it wasn't made before 1985. And we've tested it a couple of times. We test it, especially for insurance companies, and we've only found asbestos in it if it's been inside an asbestos roof, because the asbestos roof spaces we talked before is pretty much contaminated. So if you don't have an asbestos roof, if you don't have any asbestos walls in your product, or ceilings in your house, and you have got Cool and Cozy shredded newspaper treated with a fire retardant, it is not asbestos product. Okay, so I just want to make the one, Mr. Fluffy, pure asbestos. Over here, Cool and Cozy, non-asbestos. Okay, let's get back to Mr. Cool and Cozy. So there is a program in Canberra and New South Wales of identifying these houses. They have maps showing, I think there's about 1,700 known Mr. Fluffy houses in the ACT in New South Wales. Obviously they have different schemes in different states. The last time we looked into the research, they said that in the mid-90s there was a big decontamination program that went on, and back then it was about 60 grand a house, so it was huge money. And they went through and they removed all of the asbestos under A-class conditions, under FIBRO conditions. They put tents over the houses. You can see it all online, there's heaps of videos. And they went around removing as much as they could get out of the houses, and they thought they got it all, and they encapsulated it and all the standard things that you would do. Then in the early 2000s, they went back into some of those houses and found that they hadn't in fact rid all of the asbestos from the house, because it's almost impossible on that level, you know. When we remove non-asbestos insulation, blow-in insulation, we're 150, 160 square metre house will have 6 cubic metres of these types of products into it. So if you've ever, I don't know, like a little Barina car, that's like 1.5 of them. It's quite a lot of material. And if that's just blown in, it's just going to get into every corner and crevice. And that's why it was popular, because insulation works when it's a complete system. When you have bats, if you have a 20mm gap in pink bats, it reduces the efficiency of the bats by 50%. So these blow-in Mr. Fluffy type products were just amazing because there was no gap. It was a total blanket of insulation. It was incredible. And you've got to remember they thought it was safe. So after the findings in the early 2000s, they just said, that's it. These houses aren't safe to live in. In New South Wales, there was a scheme where they were unlivable, so people had to move out, and eventually they got knocked down. But in Canberra, they had a buyback system where they brought your house off you, gave you, and then you got first dibs on buying the land, and you could rebuild on that site. So that's how seriously they took the Mr. Fluffy thing. Not aware of any cases in Queensland, West Australia, obviously, South Australia, Tassie, not really. It's really confined to that Canberra sort of. I think there's been a house found in Holbrook. It's not very, very common. It's only to an isolated area, and there's a lot of information you can find out online. And I'm pretty sure if you lived in those areas, you would be well aware of it. There's even $1 million fine there was for real estate agents if they knew a house had Mr. Fluffy in it and they tried to sell it. So once again, in the 70s, in a very specific area, there's maps of where the house were, brown asbestos, amosite, pure asbestos, blown into houses used as insulation. Those houses are unlivable now. So that's it for me on Mr. Fluffy. There's plenty of more information on the internet. And if you like this video, there's plenty more other videos like this on our YouTube channel. So thanks for listening, and that's it for me today. Jason from Coastal Asbestos, thank you.